Hey everybody, happy First Friday Spirit Talk. Thank you for joining us for a very Mercury retrograde special episode. um, so here at the beginning, I'm going to do a little bit of an astrological introduction to the talk, and then we're going to jump into the main theme and introduce Ginny and Scout. So for today, because the theme of today's episode is relationships, and we're going to be talking all about relationships and relating to one another, I thought that I would get into an astrological theme that is really meaningful to me, that I have found very validating and very opening to understanding about other people, and helps inform me as I relate to others myself, and as I look out on the world and see all the different kinds of paths people are on in a more non-judgmental way. And so I wanted to talk about the different archetypes of astrology, and I kind of think we might be able to refer to them interestingly as the 12 schools of life, or something like that. The fact that there are 12 different signs, there are 12 different houses, there are not 12 per se, but several different planetary archetypes, and that what this shows, because each sign has a different way of doing things, and each house represents a different area of life. And there are parts of the astrological chart that show our karma and our direction, where we're coming from, where we're going, what we're working on, what we've already got down, where our thickest karma lies, our challenges, our themes of exploration. All of these points are signified in the chart. So we can look at 3 different people's charts, or let's say 2 different people's charts, and one person might have their south node in Virgo, showing that they're coming from having learned lots of Virgo stuff, been conditioned to do things in this detail-oriented, focused, controlling, not controlling per se, but like oriented towards efficiency and improvement kind of way. And they might have their north node in Pisces, showing that they're learning how to surrender, how to flow with things, how to let go and be guided. And then the next person you talk to could have the absolute opposite placements, and they could have their south node in Pisces and their north node in Virgo. They've got the flow down, they've got the trust down, they're relaxed, they're chilling, but they don't quite know how to organize their life, get things done in a detailed, focused way, and work on self-improvement and self-development processes, because they're too in the perfection of everything that there's nothing to improve. And so not one or the other doesn't have it right, that it's more spiritual to be surrendered, or it's more spiritual to be focused and self-improving. It's not more spiritual to be in relationships versus being independent. It's not more spiritual to be focused on detailed learning versus broader philosophical principles. All these different polarities that show up in the chart, we all have different paths and different journeys and different setups for being here, and all of it is equally valid. Hugh Jackman is just as much working on his soul path making movies as the Dalai Lama is sitting at the center of like a spiritual teaching and radiating out light. One's not doing it better or more perfectly than the other, but they might have different things that they're trying to learn here. And so to look out in the world and see things this way, that everybody is working on different things and learning in different ways, creates a very beautiful space of understanding and acceptance and non-judgment that allows you to see this whole thing as like a great big learning sandbox with many different possible orientations and setups to explore within it, and that there's not any one particular path that this is supposed to go or way that this is supposed to look. Just like everybody at a big college might be taking a different major and a different order of classes to get to their particular endpoint, and the chemistry majors aren't doing it right and the theater majors are doing it wrong, but everyone's on a different course within the big learning opportunity that holds them all. And so that's just a perspective that I wanted to share, that I've found very enriching as I've dug into astrology, and it's something that you might want to look at and get to know in your own chart, because I find that it's very validating to see laid out there that you're set up exactly how you're supposed to be set up, and you're working on exactly what you're supposed to be working on. And so with that, then, thank you for listening. I'm going to go ahead and introduce, we've got Scout Bartlett over here, Claire Sentient Healer, and Ginny Brown, Reverend Ginny Brown, Clairvoyant Counselor. I'm Christopher Mitchell. I'm a astrologer, host, questioner here, and this is Spirit Talk, where we meet the first Friday of every month to talk about different metaphysical, spiritual topics in depth. Today, we're going to be talking about relationships. If you've got any questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat box, and I will leave the links to all of our stuff in there where you can follow us and support us. So to just jump off and start up here, let's ask Ginny, so about relationships, big topic, not just personal ones, not just romantic ones, but all the different forms of relationships that we have on this planet. Can you talk about what the spiritual purpose of them is? Like what are relationships for? Why do we attract them? And why are they so important to us?
Big question. Welcome, everybody. To Spirit Talk. Feels appropriate as the Libra sun in this group to take on this question first. So a lot of, like, you may have heard this statement that comes through Hermetic law, comes through some deeper forms of mysticism, about when the purpose of God creating this earth, this universe, this experience, was to experience itself. And it's so that it could see itself. And we can't see ourselves without a reflection. Like, I don't know what I look like unless I look at a mirror or I look at you. And so the purpose of relationships is to reflect ourselves to us. And usually what we're attracted to in like a romantic relationship or in a friendship or some kind of deeper bond or connection in that way is a part of ourselves that we like, right? And in relationships that are more difficult for us, what is being reflected to us is maybe a perception that we have of lack in ourselves, or a side of ourselves we don't want to face or admit to. And so every part of relationships and relating is a way for you to see yourself, because, our eyes, we're set, our spirit is inside this vessel and we're looking out. Like, I can see Scout, and Scout can see me. And this is how we relate, right? And there's differences and there's a lot more that connects us, and we find a balance in relating through that. And so the whole purpose and why we are a moth to a flame, like why I think, I don't know who originally said it, but Osho made it famous. He said, no one becomes enlightened sitting on top of a mountain by himself. He becomes enlightened by being in the city among the people. And that's because you get lit up. You have experiences that expand and retract you. And through that, you become enlightened to who and what you are and grow. And so at the broadest stroke that I can give, the most like backed out version, this is what relationships are for and their purpose. And I can give that over to Scout to play with, like a little cat yarn ball.
I'm still looking at the fact that when they make the movie of Hugh Jackman's life, the Dalai Lama is going to play Hugh Jackman. I found that pretty impressive as a thought process.
Will he be dressed as Wolverine?
That's going to stick in my head. It's going to take a while to get rid of that. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our own individual craziness, and welcome into the conversation. Yep. We're here as spiritual beings in bodies to untangle tangled stuff as part of a larger group project for whatever it is that you'd like to consider to be that which is God. At one point in time, I asked my guidance, in a moment of clarity, I asked my guidance, what is this major drive toward partnering, toward relationship, toward one-on-one relationship in particular? What is this major drive? And my guidance said, well, there's actually two reasons for that intense drive toward partnering. Reason number one is that partnering is one route to be touched deep into the who we really are part, deep into the heart of us, and have that brought forward. And reason number two is that partnering is the world's best way to slam that stuff shut and get punched in the buttons and have to work your way through it. In the world of relationships, though, it's obviously way more than one-on-one partnerships. Sorry, even not referencing California's current trend toward polyamory. But in the world of relationships, it's way more than just our one-on-one relationship. There's relationship to parent, there's relationship to sibling, there's relationship to kid, there's relationship to chosen friends, there's relationship to bosses, there's relationship to workmates. There's relationship to favorite barista at Starbucks or. One of the pieces I find fascinating is that all of those relationships, whether it's just the barista that you're drawn to, or whether it's the checker in the grocery store that you'll never go down their row because they strike you as ucky, all of those are based in how we're interconnected at a soul essence level with each other. All of us have a core essence that is who we really are, that gets wrapped around by our lessons, which we experience as our stuff in the way. All of the places where anybody is an important factor in our life, they are connected to us at a core essence level, even if it's the awful boss that you hope you never see again, or the awful ex that you hope you never see again, or even the person that got under your skin standing in line at Walmart. Doesn't matter. It's all about that interweave of where we're connected at essence level as fragments of an original wholeness that English only has the word God. So the whole dance is a God dance, even when it's a God dance. That's it. Cool. Where are we going from there, Christopher?
I thought it might be good to clarify a bit about this idea that relationships are mirrors or reflections for us. Ginny just dropped that a little bit in her introduction to the idea of relationships. And it's pretty common in spiritual teachings to hear that relationships are mirrors or reflections for us. So I wanted to ask, I'll pass it back to you, Scout. Is that the case? Are all relationships somehow mirroring or showing us something? And if so, how does that work and how can we work with it?
The most important parts of relationships in how I perceive stuff, because I perceive stuff in threads and energy patterns, a whole lot more than visuals. Than visuals. We'll leave the visuals to Ginny, who's over there for me. When we get our buttons pushed, we find out about ourselves and we find out that we've got that button. When we get our heart touched, we find out about ourselves and we get reminded that we have that depth in our heart. Oh yeah, I guess we're going to go there. We're only going to visit here for a second. Some of you that know my history, I was together with Ruth Ann for 8.5 years, and then she finished everything she needed to do. She crossed over. I will say that when I had that tearing open of the grief process, I found a depth in me beyond what I'd been at before. I found out that I had not been operating at my full depth before. So that interconnection and my response to that, not that y'all need to go have somebody die so that you get to find your depth some other way. It's not, I don't recommend it. Sorry, that was a whole lot of jokes that I'll skip, but finding that depth in us is a whole lot of the piece. And so I have found that it's easier for me to describe relationships as being the place where we see ourselves, both in the things we agree about and in the things we disagree about, but even more so in the places where it can get under our skin and push our buttons so that we realize we have that button. Because until we get a counter to a button, we just assume that that's the normal response. It's an embarrassing story, but I would have verbal grumpiness rounds with people on the highway that did scary, life-threatening things, in my view, and I would be grumpy about them for a while. In fact, one that I can really log is that it happened early on my drive to a place that I used to work out of, and the place was an hour away. So I was still grumpy about it when I got there. So I had been busy replaying my grumpy about this person's thing that they'd done. For an hour in my head, a portion of me had been busy doing that. First off, the people that even cut us off on the highway, we have an interconnection, or we would just ignore them. But a friend of mine who rode with me periodically, jokingly said, there's a story about two monks walking along, and a woman needs to go across the stream that they're going to cross. And the one monk actually picks her up and carries her across the stream and puts her down, and they go walking on. And some distance later, the younger monk said, our order does not touch women. You picked her up and you carried her. And the older monk looks at him and says, yeah, but I put her down an hour ago. You've been carrying her all this way. And so my friend annoyingly told me that every time she was riding with me, and that I was grumping about some other driver, until it finally sank in that, oh, that's my pattern. That's not how it's done. That's not the right way. That's not of course everybody does. That's a place where I had a piece of me that was stuck, and it took a while to untangle it. Even in that relationship with my friend, being willing to annoyingly tell me that story every time until I got it. So we'll call that a reflection. I find it easier for me to look at it as the places where we can see each other and hear each other, and that we'll hear ourselves from others. But that's because I'm more sensory than I am visual. So we'll toss it over to the visual.
Yeah.
Go visual.
Go visuals. Yeah, when we're relating with people, if we're having an experience that we don't like, it's because it's something that we feel we're in lack of. Like, for instance, if you have a tendency to attract narcissistic people into your life, right? There's a pattern of what you're attracting. It could be pointing to that you tend to sacrifice yourself, that you don't have a lot of self-centered tendencies, and that you need to, or that you have a desire to, but you feel like you can't. There's some kind of block to you kind of putting yourself first or engaging with the world in a more balanced way. So all relationships are reflections of, sometimes it's the purity, it's our love at its essence. And sometimes it's places that we need to heal or lack. And it's not that they are not the problem, right? The problem is, how we're behaving inside that pattern, right? Like, if I get around a narcissistic person, do I tend to get small or get quiet, or do I get combative, or what is the tendency there? That has nothing to do with them. That has everything to do with me. Right. And so the mirrored effect is like, what is this person showing you? It came up in a study group that I'm in this week. They said, are your friends really your enemies, and your enemies actually your friends? And your friends are the people who validate, who can depends on the kind of friends you have, but typically they're on board with your stuff, right? Yeah, oh, Tom's a jerk, don't like him. They validate the insecurity, they validate the stance that you're kind of approaching with, where your enemy might say, hey, knock it off, like you're the one with the problem, right? And so there's, I think that's an interesting concept, not one I would make a conspiracy out of, but a way of looking at, what am I seeking in that moment?
It was perfect timing, though, Ginny, because we just had a typo in the chat room of how do you savage a relationship when they're doing that?
Just pull out the axe and the hammer and get to work, right? Take it medieval style. But yeah, I think really when you go into relating, when you go into a situation where you're co-creating with someone, what is it that you're wanting to create? Are you wanting a validation for an insecurity you have? Are you wanting to find a moment of courageousness? Are you wanting to build more love in this world at all cost? It's there's a lot of ways that through relating you can find out where fear has a hold of you and where love can continue to inspire you. Chris?
The axe savaging, going medieval on a relationship comment,
Yeah.
it makes me want to throw in for everyone's benefit potentially. Understanding is that astrologically, for the next month and a half, there's a big spotlight on Mars. Literally, the sun and Mars are traveling together in Libra and in Scorpio for a very prolonged period of time because they move at similar rates. So they're traveling together, and the sun is the big flashlight in the sky, the big spotlight that shows things to us. And Mars has to do with saying yes and no, and owning our desire, like going after what we want or pushing away what we don't want. And there's a way right now where for everyone in different ways, in different places of their chart, but that all of us have collectively and individually a spotlight on the Mars function right now about how do we own boundaries? How do we say yes and no? How do we say it clearly? How do we let ourselves have what we want? Is it okay to want what we want? All these kinds of Mars questions are up for review. And so if you're noticing that in your space, or if you notice that in your space, it's an invitation to get clearer and stronger and more empowered in yourself around these kinds of themes. I think a lot of what we're going to work on today, that we are working on today, can help illuminate spaces for us to allow that for ourselves. And one thing I wanted to add with what you just said, Ginny, is that I think very important, because I've gotten hung up on this before. I got tangled up in this for a little while when I first started thinking about relationships as mirrors and reflections, that they're always showing us something, right? And then what happens then if we have if there's someone in our lives who's an addict or who's codependent or who is going through trauma or turmoil, does it mean that we're somehow, something about what we're vibrating is causing that for them? Do relationships being a mirror have to mean a one-to-one thing? Or, and I'll spill the pot a little bit here, but I've realized that actually someone can be showing up in a way that's negative, not because you're negative and creating it, but because you have something to learn about empowering yourself not to take it on, or to set a boundary, or to have more freedom for yourself. Sometimes it's showing us not what we're doing, but what we can do. Is that a fair way to think of it?
Or what you're sensitive to, or what you don't have a boundary around, or where your weakness is, or where your escapism is, or where you hold a pastime image of yourself around, or how you treat yourself in, with exercise or chocolate, or. Reflections are not always direct. Usually the most direct reflection that we get are the ones of love. The other ones need for you to back up and to take a wide gaze at them and ask yourself, what is this reflecting? You are not the cause of anyone else's suffering. They may reflect to you your own point of suffering, or your triumph over suffering, or or. And it's not about gathering up all these ors and making this monstrous image of self. It is about seeing what hits, what touches, right? And working with that. If it's like, my friend's an addict, right? And it hurts for me to see them in this pattern. Why? What is the cause of the pain? It's not them. It's actually not their pattern. It's something about their situation that you relate to, and it may just be something that needs a gentle touch of forgiveness in self, or that you can't fix someone. It can be so many different angles of that mirror. It's actually like a hall of mirrors, right? But when you find the part that gives you the twinge, or gives you the pang or the ping, it's like that's where it's at. And you work with that, and it'll entangle at rest. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's really important to see things that way as well, so that we don't take everything personally or use it as a way to make ourselves wrong. It's like, it's a whole learning curve in the spiritual new age journey where you take on all these teachings, and then, or at least for me, it's possible to take on all these teachings and then realize, oh, let me not use all these teachings to invalidate and make myself wrong.
What
Can
someone
be,
does is only personal to them, right? Its effect is personal to you. They are not the cause, right? The cause of your pang is actually in you. It has nothing to do with them, right? Love pang, the desire, positive, negative, whatever framework it shows up in. They are an inspiration. They're helping you see it, but they are not the cause. You're the cause, right? And so, and the same is true in their experience. Like, even if you step on their foot and that's what makes them drink or use drugs or whatever, like, you hurt them, so they feel the right to use. That has nothing to do with you.
that's the whole point of the mirror, is to turn us inward and show us where we can be more self-loving, more self-validating, more clear. It's all to help us with our own inner process, and everything that we do is to help others with theirs.
Yeah. Like, the more this internal world reflects a place in a universe you want to be in, right? And one that's harmonious, it reflects outward. And anytime the world shows you something different, it's a hallelujah, amen kind of moment. You jump up and down and you say, this is going to liberate me. At least that's what reverends do. I don't know.
I want
What
to
do
pass
clairsentients do, Scout?
Scout a question before our meditation break and see if we can start working on some of the chat questions. If we had somebody who's asking, why is it that some couples seem to have it easier than others? And does this relate to our karma? Personally, I'd add, just like I said at the beginning, that it could be that for the people who seem to be in easy relationships, maybe they just have a lot of karmic experience with learning how to do that. Maybe they're pretty good at harmonizing, listening, communicating boundaries with others, and they can enjoy their company in a way that seems easier on the surface to those looking in. But maybe those two are working on a totally different learning journey that is easy to you, but for them is the ultimate challenge and causes them a lot of processing and stuff. And so it's not ever to take it as like, oh, they're doing it right and it's easier for them and it's harder for me. It's some of us are learning relationships, some of us have learned relationships, but that's my astrological perspective. Scout, do you want to add anything else about that?
Sorry, I'm just giggling. All I could hear was I've watched way too many courtroom dramas, and all I could hear was some courtroom lawyer going, "Is there a question in that, Your Honor?" Yeah, I've got 27 seconds, so I'm going to have to actually continue on this. I'm going to suggest that I actually continue on this after we do today's meditation. That just seems like that's a place that would fit. So, because that was a huge question, and quite frankly, I've lost track of whose month it is to lead the meditation. Chris?
I think it's your month, Scout.
Cool. Fabulous. Then I'll be the one talking. Every month when we do these at the halfway point, we do a meditation. So if you notice it's the first Friday of the month and it's 12:30 California time, whether you're with us or not, take 3 minutes and just psychically, mentally, feelingly join us into that meditation, because that's the space that the group of us will be in. And you can just join our group meditation as soon as you notice it's 12:30 California time on a first Friday. Which October was really sneaky to put the first Friday like on the first day. That was like October tried to sneak one past us. I'm going to walk you through a variation on what we call the live beam meditation, LIVE, live beam meditation. So I'll invite you to close your eyes and just let yourself take in a long, deep breath till your lungs are full and let that air flow out again. And as you're ready for another breath, let it be a long, deep breath. And this time, imagine as if that air were flowing out through your body, as if your body were layers of silk or fabric. And with each breath, let the air flow in and let it flow out through your body, feeling your body open and expand. And in your imagination, I'd like you to imagine reaching a hand down to the center of this planet Earth and stirring the warm, rich, dense energy there in the center of the planet. Curl that imaginary hand into a cup and use that cupped hand now to pull a streamer of energy from the center of the Earth right up through the Earth directly beneath you. It's just energy passing through energy, up and into your body just in front of your tailbone. And let it connect there. Let yourself feel that same warmth. Earth core through the earth, tailbone area, first chakra, associated color red. And focusing on that streamer of energy where it connects at your first chakra, base of your spine, deep inside your body, just in front of your spine, draw it up a little way to almost the height of your navel, second chakra, associated color orange. And let it connect there and expand and warm. Feel that same warmth as you stretch that streamer of energy from the center of the earth deep inside your body, just in front of your spine, from your belly button area right on up to solar plexus level, right at the bottom of your ribs. Third chakra. Associated color is yellow. And let yourself match that warmth, red, orange, yellow. And draw that streamer of energy up to heart level now, fourth chakra. Associated color green, and let that warmth match. Down at your tailbone, red, low belly, orange, top of your belly, solar plexus, yellow, heart level green, and draw that streamer up to the base of your throat, blue, fifth chakra. Bring it up to the middle of your head, indigo, that blue-black color, sixth chakra. And take it up to the top of your head, purple or violet, seventh chakra, and stretch that stream out the top of your head all the way up and into an energy cloud above you, way above you, that I'll just call source. And pierce that stream into that source so that it geysers, so that you are now the center point, drawing energy up from the center of the earth, right up through your body, and targeting geysering it so that it geysers up into source. We're uplifting, transmuting physical level energy. And bring your focus back now down to heart level, fourth chakra, associated color green. And just imagine being able to warm or spin or stretch that energy center there at heart level. As you do that, breathe to solar plexus level so that you can relax and open your sense of power. Breathe to open your throat so that you can relax and open your sense of communication and receptivity, and bring your focus back to heart level. Now imagine a being that is on the planet that you deeply know they love you and you know you love them. Any being that's on the planet in a body that you know they love you and you love them. Two-legged, four-legged, feathered. And really focus in letting that heart center relax and open to feel your love in response to their existence. And now, just for fun, imagine someone that's on the planet that just sort of gets under your skin or punches your buttons into jam. And focus in your heart. And notice, feel, sense, observe, witness how you responded to imagining that individual. And since your love is your love and they are them, you are you and they are them, and you can let them be them wherever they are, let your heart come back open, even if you were to imagine this difficult individual being right there in the same space with you. Just focus in that heart center and let it come open. Let yourself be your own energy flow. It turns out that smunching our energy flow in someone else's honor is missing the point. Open that energy flow again. Bring your focus back. Release those other beings. Bring your focus back. And just again imagine that beam of energy from the center of the planet right up into your body at your tailbone, red. A little further up, orange. Solar plexus, yellow. Heart level, green. Throat level, blue. Middle of your head, indigo. Top of your head, purple. and right on out your head, feeling yourself connected with that stream through the middle of you so that you are centered and connected from earth core to source. Now, moving your physical body, take the thumb and fingers of one hand and squeeze one fingertip on the other hand while you remember yourself as being that centered beam, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, earth core to source. Squeeze the fingertip on the other hand while you remember that you sense with that beam through you centering you. Relax that squeeze, and then squeeze again while you remember you with that center beam flowing up through you, all the way to source, feeling yourself centered, feeling your heart center able to open, and relax that squeeze. Now go ahead and give your body a really big breath. Just let that stretch your neck and shoulders. And with another big breath, let it bring your eyes back open and bring you right on back into the room or the outside or wherever you are. Welcome back. I forget I have to be more expansive. That fingertip squeeze was to anchor that memory. You can, every time that you're feeling really heart-centered or really alive or vivid, squeeze that same fingertip again to layer upon layer heart-open centered moments into that trigger. But anytime that you notice you've just gotten thrown completely out of center, you can use that same fingertip. This happens to be the one I squeezed, whichever one you chose. But you can use that same fingertip squeeze to bring your body back and remind you of that centered state. I did some study with a wonderful teacher named Patricia Sun, coincidental to reading a lot of science fiction by a guy named Heinlein. And Heinlein in his book has a recurrent character that's very old and very wise that's called Lazarus Long. He's, 500 years old, so he got some, he figured some stuff out. And one of Lazarus's quote is, if in any disagreement with, I'll say a loved one, I don't remember the quote exactly, but the commentary is, if in any disagreement with a loved one, you should suddenly discover that you are right, stop and apologize immediately. Patricia Sun's teaching on the same topic is, in any dispute with someone that you care about, the first person that becomes sane, that can pop out of that clenched state, the first person that can pop out of that clenched state and become sane, it's their job to stay sane until both of you can pop out of the clenched state and reconnect. Now, I will tell you that led to an hysterical argument with Ruth Ann. At one point in time, in the middle of a growly moment, she looked me right in the face and said, I am sick and tired of always having to be the one that comes sane. I am not coming sane this time. It's your turn. To which I said, it's always me that's the first one that becomes sane. So the argument shifted from whatever it had been on to who it was that always got sane first, which was a really hard argument to sustain, since the next step when you become sane is come back to your heart space and interact with that person from your heart space rather than from that tangled up trigger that got triggered. Every relationship, every time you notice you went clenched, and again, barista, person at the grocery store, your kid, your friend, your coworker, as soon as you notice you got clenched for your own path, nothing to do with them, because I really want to reinforce what Chris was saying. Everybody around you, they just do what they do. And sometimes you're the one that's in front of it. Your response is your response. Right now, and sorry about this, but I grew up in Kansas, and racist jokes were pretty common among people that I knew in the farm communities of Kansas. And as a kid, I didn't get the content of that, so they were funny because they were jokes. As I got a broader view, because my neighborhood was pretty much white bread, as I got a broader, in every way, as I got a broader view and really started to have a depth of the feel of that, I notice now that if I'm back in Kansas visiting, and if somebody does even slides over into that area, there are people in the room that thinks that's joyful and funny. And there's me in the room that goes clench. What should I do about this? What do I need to do about this to fix them, correct them, re-guide them, whatever crap goes with that for my clench? And my job is still, under those circumstances, the first thing for me to do is unclench, come back to my heart, and interact from my heart. I don't necessarily have to teach them how to not do what they do. They may not get it from me, but at the same time, I'm not going to be like laughing along and in support of that. And if that's the direction the conversation goes, I'm either going to interrupt it or split. And they'll catch on to whatever they catch on to from there. And sorry to bring that topic in, but it was just the first example that I had available. But it's not just about that. My grumping at the other drivers would really clench up my friend that we frequently drove together, which is why she would tell me that story to tell me to knock it off. That's not a normal response, Scott. That's not what you have to do. Unclench, even if you just got startled by somebody's interesting driving skills. But particularly in our closest relationships, one-on-one partnership, family, close friends, those places that make us go jam, and it's a big challenge to say, as soon as you notice you went into jam, it's not the most important thing for you to solve what the problem was. It's not the most important thing for you to win the argument. It's not the most important thing for you to educate them how they're wrong. The most important thing is to reopen your heart center and then interact from there to see what you want to say from there. And that's the hard lesson part of relationships, because relationships are so good at pushing our buttons into jam for us to remember in the middle of, I'm still mad at the monk for carrying the woman across the stream, as it were. In the middle of, they did that bad driving thing, to come conscious, to let your awareness step forward, so that you can have your emotion rather than be your emotion. And so that you can recognize that you went into jam and it's not actually justified by anything anybody else is being or doing. They're doing what they're doing. They're being who they're being. They do what they do. Sometimes you're the one in front of it, and you take it how you take it. And your gig is to pull that back open. Now, jumping back for 1 second, couples. Some couples look like they don't go into jam with each other. From the outside, that looks like that's way easier. Sometimes when you're around that relationship, you find out that it's an incredibly tricky tiptoe dance through the minefield, because they never address any of the mines, and so they very carefully tiptoe around each other. In other cases, you find out they just have a really sweet, significant depth of connection where they do only trigger each other's heart. How sweet is that? But, they'll get their buttons pushed at work. You're still going to get your lessons.
Something in there just gave me a question, because we're talking about coming from the heart and these kind of jams that can happen.
Actually, if I could, Chris, one tiny word correction. Sure. I'm talking about coming back to your heart.
Yeah, and I think that's where I'm getting, because one of the questions I had on here to explore has to do with how to work with the feelings that come up in relationship and in just co-living with others. The fact that we as humans, we get frustrated, we get annoyed, or we dislike things, or we have judgments that come in. And I think that it's so often we spiritually will make ourselves wrong for feeling these things that are natural human responses that we feel, like, oh, I'm not supposed to be averse to anything. I'm not supposed to feel a rejection or a judgment but in some ways I've learned that I was doing myself a disservice as I thought that way inwardly at myself, and that what I thought were judgments actually was often just me invalidating my own discernment and higher knowing. That what I thought was unconscious frustration was often just showing me where my boundaries were, or where I needed to be more respectful of myself. And so there are these emotions that we label as negative when they run through our system. And I wonder if, in talking about coming back to the heart, there's two questions here. One of them is, how do we work with these emotions that we see that sometimes are labeled as negative? But I also wanted to wonder at, is it always right to come back to our heart? Is it always right to come from the heart? Or are there times when for our evolution, for our journey, other parts of us need to speak? and that we need to be allowed to come from other places, and that in some way it might be too forceful with ourselves to put the expectation on that we're always supposed to be a certain way on this human journey. And so there's a lot to explore there, but I'd love to pass that back to you if you would like to share, and then maybe we can give it to Ginny too.
It's a quote from either Hugh Jackman or Dalai Lama. I get them confused. Which is, someone asked about how to handle a dispute with another, and the response was, there is no other. So, is coming back to my heart always an ideal? I think so. I can't answer whether it's always right, because that word doesn't apply in this question. But is coming back to my heart always the ideal? Yeah, I think so. That's how I'm going to find my way through. Now, does that mean that God, well, kind of like people think about meditation, where they think, I'm going to sit down and clear my mind for an hour, and if I sit down and I can't clear my mind for an hour, I can't meditate. And that's not it. You know, it turns out there's a lot of technique for learning how to let go of your passing thoughts and come back to your chosen focus, and that's the focus of meditation. Meditation is not about holding a clear and centered state. Meditation is about rapidly finding your way back to your chosen thought every time you get dragged off of it. Being in the heart is about rapidly finding your way back to that heart every time that you get your buttons pushed and you get bounced out of it. And there are a lot of tools for unhooking the hooks that have held us for so many years. I mean, I laugh about my friend telling me the same story more than once. And that was her simplest tool to go, you're doing it again, and you're still owning it as if it's real, Scout. That was a tool. You know, let's work from that story. There's a lot of tools for letting it go. One piece that I really like to point out is that one of the biggest buttons we have where we get most fiercely growly, we get really growly when we have been holding ourselves contained within some set of limitations, rules, whatever. And we have been staunchly holding ourselves contained into those rules, whether they are the rules somebody taught us, whether they're the rules we adopted, whatever. And then someone else comes along and they're not living inside that box. You know, they have the freedom to raise their hand. They have the freedom to ask for a raise. They have the freedom to go, you know, ask out the person that they find stellarly attractive that we were trying to be polite to not pester. And then we get really growly that they didn't stay inside the box. So one of the really key elements is when you notice somebody's doing something that you just know that's beyond what anybody should be doing. Time to check your boundaries as to whether or not you want to hang out with them. But B, time to check your limitations to go, whoa, am I growly about that? Because I have been holding myself limited on whether or not I can have that level of freedom or that level of fun or that level of playfulness or that level of putting myself forward. Am I growly because I've been holding myself inside a tight box? It's way too flipping tight for me. Tools, finding the places to notice the recurrent factors and finding ways to release them and let them go. I think it's 2 episodes ago, I think I did the rose and frame technique as part of the meditation 2 episodes. I see a head nod. Thank you. Thanks, Roseanne. So you can jump back into that one. That's a really solid tool. We do various tools within the teaching, within the questions and answers. All 3 of us are giving you the tools that we've worked with in this context. Come back to your heart. All right, Ginny. Oops, that was give them more.
Well, the path back to the heart is, you have to work with your fears. It's not a direct path. It's not about coming back to love and light and sending someone on their way at all. In fact, a lot of times when people are coming back to what they think is their heart, they're coming back to a boundary that stands in the way of receiving and of connecting in an authentic way. So it takes you really have to be a samurai and sit with the discomfort, understand the discomfort, listen to its story about you, about the other, about all of it, and let it run deep, let it run Scorpio deep. in you, so that you can harvest like what it is, its pattern, because your defense mechanisms, and I think a lot in the spiritual community is to just kind of um, uh, come to a heart place, right? And to be loving towards people, that it's not necessarily that's not what's being called for in that moment.
Or let me learn the spiritual terminology so that I can either battle better with it or maintain or justify my stance more strongly.
Because self-love shows up in the form of boundaries. Self-love shows up in the form of no. Self-love shows up in a way of I want you in my life, but I can't have you in my life. There's respect, and those can be very, very challenging for people who have been taught another way of living. That shows up a lot for women. We're not allowed to have boundaries, or we're not allowed to have a no. We're not allowed to have anger, and things like that. And so, it really, you have to look at, where is love pointing me? Love is sitting behind that wound. It's sitting behind that pang. And to really kind of re-enter into the heart space, you have to be willing to understand it and work with that, and see what direction love is taking you, like to that heart space. Chris?
I thought a good thing to touch on here would be about the, actually I'm getting a different hit. So it's trying to redirect me a different way, so I'll go a different place. And that maybe, because I know we're probably wrapping up on this question, and I think a great one to, we've been orbiting around it this whole time, but to put a bow on it, is how at the heart of all of this is our relationship with ourselves. And as we talk about our expectations of others, our triggers, our desires from others, all the things that, where we get a little spun out or outside of ourselves in a relationship, that the mirror, that it's all pointing us fundamentally to our relationship with ourselves. And so I wanted to give some space to talk about that, and how we can use it that way. I know that I've been finding that the less I judge myself, the less I judge others, the more I love myself, the more love I receive from others, the more I let myself run confidence, the more people experience me confidently and reflect that back to me. And so there seems to be something very fundamental to me about how all of this is helping us to be more loving and harmonious to the big family. And I can, as astrologer, point to this, that we have charts that have all these different parts that are square and opposite and in friction. This planet's quincunx that planet, they don't get along. Some of us have quite a lot of different dynamics within us for us to be the loving parent and space holder to. And I think that as we do that, and as we can be more all-encompassing of ourselves in a loving way, that beautifully the whole world kind of gets that same energy from us. And that in some ways that's the sorry, my questions today are more rambly than questions, but that seems to be the project here, that we find more and more ways to love and understand and validate our internal experience, and then that gets to be what we experience with others synchronistically. Is that fair to say? Do you have some wrap-up comments on that, and how we might take all of this as a way to work that way with ourselves? Scout, go ahead. If you'd like to.
Sure. We play a game with Chris where we throw him off into state and then pitch to him, so he has to like get his brains back in a hurry. And he just busted me because I was making a response over in the chat area, and he caught me with my head and nailed me back. So, touche.
I told you at the beginning, it's a very Mercury retrograde special edition of Spirit Talk. I came in out of state today, so.
Nice. There's a place where in a particular treatment thing that I call the acceleration treatments, there's a really powerful part of those treatments. And for those of you here today, I'm going to go slightly hypnotic for a moment, so just relax. But there's a really powerful part of that treatment where what I point out to people is that we can honor the fact that everybody else, what they're doing, we can honor the fact that we honor everybody else on their life path. And that all of their choices and all of their outcomes are their essence, unfolding their lessons through their life path. So we can release them and honor that we're releasing them to their own life path, that all of their choices and all of their outcomes are them and their essence unfolding their lessons through their life path. And once we honor that we can honor them on their life path, it allows us to recognize that we can honor that we also are on our life path, and that all of our choices and all of our outcomes have been our essence unfolding our lessons to bring us here, now, making the realizations we're making now. It's all about unfolding and finding our way back to our awareness, back to our consciousness, dropping out of the patterns, dropping out of the tapes, finding ways out of the patterns, out of the tapes, and being reminded of our own essence, our own centered state, which frequently we recognize as heart state. So one of my favorite heart states, I'll toss that over to Ginny.
Aw, I like that. When it comes to, bringing everything back home to yourself, I think one of the most cleansing ways to do that is to leave behind what didn't work for you and take what does. To really look at the situations that you find yourself in and not sugarcoat it. If life dealt you a hard lesson, like, what did you learn about yourself through it? How did you learn like a new level of self-care by getting out of it? Like what sort of takeaway can you take and add to the whole of you versus holding on to something that feels painful or something that creates separation or a false sense of boundary? A friend of mine, as a question, we were walking in the park, she asked me, if you're closed off to one person, does that mean you're closed off to all? And that philosophy to me really rings true. I had to sit down, I could not walk anymore. I was like, this is a philosophical conundrum, and it continuously rings true to me. So allowing yourself to reopen despite your experiences, to learn how to engage a pattern that you're in or that you have found yourself in over and over again, only to rediscover a new level of strength, only to discover that you're becoming more whole or better boundaried or more loving or more accepting or more compassionate or more empathic, to that situation is what to take away. Because inside everything is love. It's just masked. It's masked in things that we don't always want to see it as. If someone is giving you something you don't like, look for the love in it and take that piece and leave the rest. And it doesn't mean you have to continuously engage with them. It doesn't mean that you have to sacrifice a part of yourself for it. You just take the love and leave. Chris?
Trying to come up with a way to segue that into us saying goodbye, as in like take the love and leave.
And leave. Yeah. But I think that's it.
Yeah, take whatever here helped you, and maybe join us next time for relationships part 2 for Scorpio season. We're going to be focusing on the more intimate sexual partnering aspects of it, exploring a lot of fun questions there as well, and some of the ones we didn't have space to fully get into today, but I think there'll be a lot that we can continue to unpack on these themes. So for me, all the links are posted in the chat box. If you want to get in touch with me for astrological stuff, my email is unlimitedastrology@gmail.com. Got kind of a Mercury retrograde sale going on at the moment. And Ginny and Scout, if you want to share a little bit, I know their websites are up in the chat, and but go ahead and sign off, and then we'll see everybody next month.
You can find me here. You can find Scout there. That's all I have to say.
If I want to tell you about a couple things, I have to turn the mic back on. Sorry. I have a couple of announcements. One I'm very excited about. I do a radio show that airs in San Francisco every Monday and Wednesday morning at Dark 100, 6 a.m. But it also archives up on our website under Radio Archives. You can listen to it there, no charge whatsoever. This Monday's show will be introducing our new theme music. Thank you very much, David Whitaker and Neon Buffalo Music. We have our own brand new theme music that we hired, contracted, got made, and it's ours. So we're bringing forward our new theme music. The other piece is for years I had a tradition through a facility I used to work out of where I would do a workshop on Halloween night. And this year I've decided to reopen that, not at that facility because we don't do things there. You can't, it's COVID. But so I will be doing a Zoom presentation Halloween night. I'm thinking I'm going to start like 8 o'clock California time, because then the Californians that need to take their little ones out to trick or treat, you can be home by 8. And quite frankly, if we start at 8, it's not like there's going to be a line for the bathroom when we're starting, because you'll be at your place, and we'll be done by about 9:30. So you'll already be home. So there's no commute in California, East Coast people. Sorry about that. So that'll be Halloween night, 8 o'clock. And so jump onto my email or go in and find Life Insights Subtext Educational up on Facebook. But get yourself on both of our email lists, all 3 of our email lists. Go into the website to put yourself in so that we can stay in touch. I see some people here that I haven't seen in a while, and we've got people from other continents this time. That's really exciting. I love that you guys came. Great to see you. Thanks for being here, and take the love and split.
Cool.
From my heart.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll see you next First Friday. And peace.